Hi there, everybody. We got Senator Cutter today and really appreciate you being here.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
So tell us, what was it that it caused you to first run for office, to get involved politically?
Well, but that's a long story, so I'll try and make it short. I have always really been interested in government. In sometimes I hate it when people say politician because I suppose there are some politicians, but I think it's being a public servant and government is just the way your world works, right? People don't want to talk about politics. Well, what? You don't want to talk about the roads? You don't want to talk about, I mean, it's just how our lives are structured. And so I've always been interested in that. And after 2016, when Trump was elected the first time, I was depressed and, wanted to do something. And I had some friends that suggested I get involved with the Women's March. They needed some public relations support, and I had a public relations firm. And so I jumped in to help with that and got really involved with the Women's March and ended up staying with that for a year and then the next year. Really involved that first year when they did it here in Denver in 2017 and then became one of the organizers for 2018 as well. And it just felt really good to do something. That's what I always say, do something, don't complain about it, do something.
Right.
And I really much have the ethos that it's up to us to create the world that we want to see. So that was important to me. And after that, I thought, well, maybe I'm ready for the next step to run for office. I talked to several people and interacted with a lot of different community members and elected people during, the time working on the march. And my kids were grown up and I, had a little bit more flexibility in what I wanted to do. And so I decided to run.
And tell everybody, where's your district?
Right now, I represent Senate District 20, which is a lot of Jefferson County, a big chunk of Lakewood, and most of the foothills. So I go all the way. I don't have Conifer anymore. I had that in my House district. But I go all the way from like Evergreen, Morrison, all the foothills communities north, and I have a tiny little bit of Arvada, actually, Candelas area, and then just a big chunk of the middle of Lakewood. They're weird.
Okay.
All the districts are it's so
Yeah.
geographically weird, but I think kind of a fun fact is that I grew up in Jefferson County. I went to Pomona High School and have, moved out a little bit during college. I lived in Boulder and have lived away a couple of times, but almost my entire life have lived in Jefferson County. So now I get to represent it. So I grew up in Arvada, so I love that.
All right, good. What are you hoping to accomplish over your time in the legislature?
There are so many things I wanted to accomplish. I think a couple of things come to mind. I really believe, wanted to do everything I could do about climate change and sustainability and that kind of thing. So when I became a legislator, I realized that there was lots of work done in oil and gas and, those kinds of typical climate change areas that are super important, but not too much was being done in sustainability. And so I sort of took that on and decided that that's where I really wanted to make an impact. So I've done a whole bunch of legislation around environmental issues in general, but my first summer as a legislator, I asked for a interim committee on zero waste because I'd wanted to do some legislation that didn't pan out. And my friend and mentor, actually, who's now a senator with me, Daphne Michelson Janae, said, well, ask for an interim committee. And I did, and it's kind of a process, and honestly, I was shocked that I got it, but they did. They awarded me an interim committee, so I was able to have, I think it was 10 people, bipartisan committee for people from both chambers, and we got to really dive in and study zero waste issues and learn a lot about it, take a few field trips, hear from all kinds of experts, all kinds of people working in that. And that was sort of a journey. Lots of subsequent legislation came out of that. We're still working on pieces out of that. And
What
that's
would you say is the biggest piece of legislation so far that's
out of that. Oh, that's an easy one. It's extended producer responsibility. So that was legislation to require all companies. It's for packaging. So it was to require everyone involved in creating packages. I don't have anything to show you. I'm thinking like if a paper cup is labeled with your brand name, then that's the organization that pays into this. It's kind of complicated, but essentially there's this group that come together and are required to pay fees based on the amount of trash that they generate. There's eco-modulation, meaning fees are based on not only on like weight, but how environmentally friendly is it? How easy is it to recycle? Glass, for example, is super heavy, but it's also really easy to recycle. And we have what we call a closed loop here in Colorado. So the fees would, likely be less on that. So that is actually just coming online now, and we're hoping to have it all stood up. It's a process, right, to figure out what we need throughout the state and how to meet those goals. But the end goal is that there will be consistent recycling for everyone in the state. However you do your recycling now, for example, if you take, in rural areas, they may take their recycling to the dump. But you and I may get curbside. So however you do it now, you will still be able to do it that way, but you won't pay for it. Your community won't pay for it. Your HOA, whatever, your local government, it'll strictly be paid for by the producers of the waste. So I'm really excited. It'll be consistent throughout the state. So when you go to Aspen, it won't be, you'll understand. I think there's a lot of confusion. So when you go somewhere else, this might be recyclable, but it's not at my house. And so it'll be consistent. There'll be education around it. And I think that is probably something that I'll be forever proud of, that I can look back and say, I really helped do something meaningful. Our diversion rates now are 15%. Horrible. So we're really hoping to boost that and keep things out of the landfill. Just to circle back on the climate change piece, that's a huge part of climate change, waste.
Oh, yeah.
So I felt like, we were doing something that was flying under the radar a little bit.
So do you think you'll be able to stop the issue of Amazon sending, I kid you not, a 12 by 12 by 8-inch box that had 4 little flat batteries in it?
So annoying. Isn't that so annoying? Well, honestly, yes, that should help. And other states, there's a few other states that have been following along. We were the third to actually pass this legislation. They're doing it all over Europe, and it has different in Canada, and it has made changes. And I honestly think, especially as more states go along, that they're going to have to change their habits. That's sort of a sub goal of this whole thing, is to reduce the packaging in general, because they're going to have to pay more if they don't. So you know how companies are motivated.
Well, and the thing on this one is, it's good for the environment. I think you'll have most people just happy that it's just annoying. You get these giant boxes with these small things in them, Yeah.
Agreed.
I guess I'm talking to the choir on this one.
Definitely.
All right. So Monday morning, you walk into the legislature. There's the leadership of the House and the Senate and Governor Polis, and they're all there to tell you you've been doing such a terrific job. You can pick one piece of legislation, and they will instantly pass it. He'll instantly sign it. What's that piece of legislation?
Oh, that is such a hard question. Oh my gosh, I really don't. Boy, I'm trying to think of what it would be in sustainability. I don't know. I really can't say. Honestly, this year we've done reproductive rights. We've done a ton of stuff, which is another focus area. We've done a ton of stuff on climate change. Maybe something to do with climate change, protecting forests. Maybe something like that. Protecting. Here's one. In light of all the federal stuff that's going on, my wish list is a mile long, right? But in light of all the federal stuff that's going on, maybe we were somehow able to protect all of the forests in Colorado, even including federal lands. That if we were somehow able to prevent drilling and, clear cutting of our land, I think that would be amazing.
All right, so staying on all that, the answer to this one might be for us also. What's our biggest environmental issue right now we face in Colorado?
Well, I work a lot. I'm going to go to wildfire because I work a lot on wildfire issues. And that's another area that I sort of consider climate change and sustainability.
And by the way, 45 minutes more of high wind and the Marshall Fire would have taken out my town now. So I love hearing you say that.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really important issue. Climate change in the way it's impacting extreme weather events, which are creating hotter and faster moving fires, more extreme fires. So I think that's a really big issue. And we struggle a lot with funding for fire districts, which I'm currently working on, insurance for people living in the WUI, the wildland urban interface, and mitigation efforts, just all the things we need to do to try to minimize fires like that.
But if we have the Marshall Fire, I mean, that thing picked up, and I mean, it was a just awful infernal, and the fire departments had just, been told about like 2 minutes earlier. How that's going to happen again? I mean, it is. Can we stop that, or are we stuck with while the wind is high, all we can do is stop the edges?
Well, I don't think we can stop it. I mean, it's just something that's happening. I think we have to do a few things. We have to build resilience. We have to do whatever we can to mitigate for that. When your property is mitigated, that lessens your chances of your house burning down, and then that means your neighbor's house might not catch on fire, right? So, an example, after the Marshall Fire, I worked with Rep Brown, who represents Superior, and ran a bill that HOAs couldn't require elements in your home that superseded good wildfire practices, right? So they were in the community that was really hit, one of the communities really hit by the Marshall Fire. They were requiring them to rebuild 6-foot wooden fences, which is like a wick, right? Mm-hmm. And so we said, you can't do that. Homeowners associations don't have the right to, demand something that is going to impact your wildfire resilience. So I think things like that are really important. I think just building community resilience in general, switching our building practices. We're in the process now of actually another bill that I'm really proud of is the Wildland Urban Interface Code Board. When I first started working on wildfire issues, I was shocked that there was no standard building code in the state. We're a local control state, so there's people don't want the state to tell them what to do. They want to decide that in their own community. Fire is a matter of statewide concern. If there's a fire burning in the community next door, my resources, my firefighters, and may go over there to help. The wind is going to bring the smoke over to my community. I'm going to have air quality issues and potentially health issues. I mean, it affects everyone. Tourism, the roads, the water. And so we passed this bill that stood up a Wildland Urban Interface Code Board and brought people from all over, different experts and stakeholders, to create a minimum standard building code. And then that's new builds or substantial remodels is what it impacts. But that's a step in the right direction, right? That's building us for more resilient community. So I think it's going to be a lot of those things. And I think, but we can't prevent the fires. We have to do what we can to minimize them, minimize the impact. And then on the other hand, better resource our fire departments, which is something else we're working on.
Did you get much pushback from the cities when you came out? Because that had to be something new of, guess what, everybody, there's going to be a minimum standard on building codes. Or were they mostly in agreement with that?
I'm trying to think of the municipal league, the Colorado Municipal League. I think they ended up being supportive in general. Colorado Communities Incorporated, CCI, the county body, was supportive. We worked with everybody. We actually had a really good process. And of course, initially pushback from some of them because they did, it is going to impact them. But we worked together to make sure that, we made some concessions. Everyone's voice was represented at the table. We're actually working on refining a few things right now so that it's easier for them to implement.
All right, good. All right, totally new one. What happens to us here in the state if Trump is successful in gutting Medicaid?
There's no sugarcoating this, David. We're in a lot of trouble. I mean, the fact is we can't backfill that. We can't make that up. So I really, substantively, I don't know. I mean, we're at risk of losing a lot of money. We just lost $250 million anyway in health funding, federal health funding, and the Medicaid issue is significantly going to be a problem. I mean, we're going to have to restructure some things. I would imagine there's a potential that we'll have to come back for a special session based on some of these federal cuts, because you may know we're already under a significant budget crisis.
Yeah.
And I would really like to make sure people understand that these federal actions are going to be a problem and are incredibly harmful and irresponsible. But we are not in a good place with our budget, and that's on us. By us, I don't mean we are just spending too much and we can shake loose the couch cushions, because that's not really a thing. We have some significant structural deficits in our budget, some issues with the way our budget has to work, and that's based on some of the formulas in Tabor. some of the ratios that are set out in Tabor. So when, we can't keep pace with inflation in terms of spending. And that's a problem when, healthcare spending is going up, road work is going up, construction, all kinds of things. So we were already.
Yeah, I've been interviewing Colorado politicians for I think close to 30 years now. And I mean, almost always what comes up is because of Tabor, it's, duct tape and baling wire, and we're just barely sort of holding everything together this year. And, in some years it just gets really awful. And, the best it ever gets is, well, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah. I mean, when we had that influx of government funding and some investments under the Biden administration, we were able to do some good things, but now a lot of that is being dialed back. And yeah, Tabor fundamentally ties our hands. I mean, I think we should be smart about the way that we spend money and the decisions we make. There's lots of debate about how we can cut here. Is this really necessary? That's healthy. That's good debate. That I don't want to ever imply that, we can always do better and taxpayer money is incredibly important. But I also believe that investing in things up front is a better way to run a government, create communities, build communities, than by taking care of things on the back end. I mean, investing in good education, really good, high quality education, is better than dealing with the problems that are created by having an uneducated workforce, right, or children that have not been supported, children who do not have enough food to eat, that have horrible home situations. I mean, there's all kinds of ways we can invest in community to have better outcomes in the long run. And sometimes that requires a little more money up front. But I fully and completely believe that society will pay off. It will pay off in multiple ways, including monetary ways, although that's not the only way I measure success.
Yeah. All right. So 8 years ago, we were a purple state. 6 years ago, at least I was, an awful lot of Democrats were shocked that we just ran the table in every statewide race. And the demographics of the state have not changed that much in the last 6 years. Could we go back to being purple, or do you think we're safely blue?
Well, I feel like we're pretty safely blue. And honestly, I feel like because the current administration is so incredibly extreme, I mean, scary extreme, I think that will, and I hope, I'm knocking on wood right now, I hope that will help us, because I think people are beginning to understand that just because the right is up here doesn't mean the middle's over here. I mean, I've been having that conversation a lot. People will say the left swung too, or the left swung too far left, and I said, well, okay, give me an example of that. And people don't, is feeding school children lunches and making sure that they have healthy food, is that too extreme? Is trying to make people, help people get out of homelessness rather than shove them aside and criminalize that, is that too extreme? So there's certainly ways to debate all these things in a way that makes sense and some give and take. But I don't think those policies are too extreme. I think people want everyone to have health care. You don't want to worry about your grandma. I just think there's some goals that we can all agree on in society.
It's interesting, though, that your comment was not that, we couldn't go back to being purple. It was that who the Republicans run are so far out there on the right, that will guarantee that we stay.
I think so. I really do. I don't, that's my feeling. I mean, at least I hope so. And also, it's funny, looking in the context of history and how things have been over the last several years, like there's been presidents and administrations and politicians, Republicans in general, that I don't agree with, but I can, but there's still much common ground. There's still mutual respect and there's a way to work together. And honestly, that's how I think it should be. I don't think that any party should run the boards all the time, right? I think that we should be able to come to the table and work together to create smart policy that benefits everyone.
All right. Last question for you. What do you see as the big challenges for Colorado in the next 20 years?
The next 20 years, I think we're going to continue to we've made a lot of headway, but I think we'll continue to have transportation challenges. We've grown a lot, and that's been something that's been a struggle. I mean, we have a lot of issues in that area, although I do believe we've come a really long way. So I think, expanding our rapid transit, our mass transit system, Tabor, again, funding, I'm incredibly hopeful that we can hopefully that won't stretch out 20 years. I hope we can take care of that. And really, when you think about projecting out from issues that we're experiencing now, education. Like, we have got to start properly funding our education system. When we had the property tax debate last summer, I remember on special session, I think I was speaking to funding for fire, but I was just talking about how I was at the well talking about, underfunded we were in some of these really key areas. And I said, well, hopefully someday we can aim to be, 40th in education funding. I mean, and that's not a joke.
Right.
It's aspirational right now. So I think if we don't take care of some of those things that, it's going to come back to haunt us. I mean, that said, I want to also be sure that your listeners know how proud I am to live in Colorado and how the multiple things that we've done to create a good, safe, welcoming, prosperous state are fabulous. I'm so proud to have been a part of those things, and I wouldn't live anywhere else.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
I really appreciate you being on here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.